Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Ali, Honorable.
Good evening, Agatha.
Are you in charge of Ministry of Environment, Ministry of, because this cap is giving, I'm rich and famous.
You dress for the job you want.
Can everyone hear him? I'm not sure I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
All right, thank you. I think it's from her end. She seems to have frozen. Agatha, can you hear me?
Okay, great. I can hear you now. Sorry. iPhone is the worst when it comes to hotspotting a system. The absolute worst. How are you doing, Ali?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Yeah.
How's your week been?
The weekend is going fine. No, how is everyone else doing? I'm sure they're still joining. So welcome everyone. While other people join, I'll just welcome Mr. Ali, who is our very esteemed guest today on this month's episode of Sustainability Matters. I don't want to do the honors of introducing him, but Ali has one of the most interesting profile I read in a minute. I read his profile and I was laughing because what is that? Let you introduce yourself, Ali, to the people so we can start.
Well, you have the profile.
No. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I'm not going to read the profile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Ali Anwar. I'm a sustainability and ESG consultant. I am from Kano State. I hail from I'm the second from a family of 7. I studied MIS as my undergrads, and I have an MBA, Business Administration. I studied in Istanbul, Turkey. Work-wise, I have experience working in the media sector. I've also worked in IT, and once I came to consulting, I started working. Before that, actually, I worked part-time doing social media management. Now I'm in a consulting firm. I started as a cybersecurity consultant, before I finally moved to the sustainability and ESG space. I've always been interested in sustainability from I think my second year in university. I had a course where I remember reading. This is around, I think, no, this will be my second year, the third year actually. 2015, around the Paris Climate Accords. So I remember reading an article, and there's a line that sticks with me till this day. It says businesses can do well by doing good. So that idea, that line, or what it represents, the idea that financial gain and also serving a purpose beyond profit can coexist, has been something I've been interested in. So maybe volunteering, things around energy projects in school, and things around plastic picking, whatever I could do really to kind of be in that space. But thankfully, I found myself in the space now. And as a sustainability consultant, what I do is I build sustainability strategies and frameworks for companies.
Awesome.
ESG gap analysis, benchmark companies against the industry leaders within the sustainability space, and also best practice guidelines. I also script sustainability reports for companies and also provide assurance on reports that I didn't script. This is in line with best practice regional and global, such as the GRI, the UN SDGs, the UNGC, NGX disclosure guidelines. NGX is the Nigerian Stock Exchange disclosure guidelines. We have the NCCG, Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance. We have ISSB, SASB, are also frameworks we use internationally. I've worked for companies within the consulting space now across a multitude of industries, such as, I have it written down actually because I can't remember, FSI, telecoms, hospitality, FMCG, construction, aerospace, healthcare, oil and gas,
Wow.
IT,
Wow.
and public as well. Yeah.
We're
So
going to just leave this live for you because you are the owner of the live. Because it sounds like there's no industry you've not touched yet. Well done, Ali. Well done. That's impressive. There was no way I was going to introduce you better than what you just did. So well done.
thank
Because
you.
of time, this is a 1 hour meeting. I want us to dive straight into it. Today we're going to be discussing about climate change, and especially as it relates to businesses from a business perspective. There's been a lot of buzz around climate change of recent, and it appears to be like developing countries like Nigeria are just catching up with the discussion. Is one of the reasons why sustainability matters exist, so that we can familiarize ourselves with the terrain. When other people are bringing conversations around the issue, we can also chip in one or two things. And there's no better person to bring us a very detailed understanding of the subject matter than Ali. So Ali, I'm going to be asking a couple of questions. But first of all, like, what's been your first interaction with the concept of climate change? Your very first interaction, what did you think about the subject matter when you heard about it?
My first interaction with climate change. I can't say what my first interaction would be, but I think what is most vivid is I think one of the island nations in the South Pacific. I remember reading about how the islands are sinking, and currently I can't remember the name. It's Hawaii, something kind of name. But you have a country of I think maybe 500 people or so that now has bought land in another country because they envision that in the next 15, 20, 25 years, the country is going to be sunken and they have to move elsewhere. So I think the plight of rising sea levels and island nations was also flooding as well, you know, even within the African context, was my first real interaction with what climate change was. And so I think, like most people, you try to read more on it and try to understand what the science behind it is and what it's all about.
Yeah. As much as I want to tailor this conversation to just businesses, and because I know on this live, there are a couple of us who are business owners. And aside from the people on this live, there are going to be many, many more hundreds of people who are going to be watching this recording. So before we go down to how climate change affects businesses categorically, how do you think climate change affects us as individuals? What impact? Because you wake up, you go about your business, you come back home. How does it really affect us as individuals?
Okay, so if I could maybe just explain to us what climate change is, I think then bring it back down to context.
Yeah.
So climate change is, in essence, nothing new. That's within the context of the Earth, because it refers, when you speak to climate, it refers to the long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns over tens of thousands of years. Now, most of us have heard about the Ice Age. So the climate then was cold. Now it's hotter. But for the most part, climate goes in a very slow and linear pattern. But over the last, I would say, since the industrial age, about the 1800s, the biggest contributor to climate change has been human activity, right? So things that take thousands of years, millions sometimes. If you look at geological age of the Earth, the biggest determiner now of what climate is going to be tomorrow is human activity. I think over the last 50 years, CO2 levels, which are again greenhouse gases, the biggest contributors to climate change, actually, or we can say global warming, rose by 90%, right? To kind of differentiate as well between climate and weather, you can think of climate as being someone's personality. Now, once you reach adolescence, for the most part, who you are, your personality doesn't change much. Your mood may swing multiple times, 1,000 times a day, which is really weather. But now climate change is basically we've changed the personality of the Earth, and we're surprised that the mood swings are coming. So that's sort of it. How climate change affects us as individuals is air pollution is one, actually. I think I can speak to air pollution. Generally, we can speak to droughts and flooding and earthquakes, but I think all of us really have heard about that, and it's top of mind. But air pollution is one that is, I'd say, more sneaky. It's not something we really consider here in Africa, or maybe in Nigeria. I was doing research for this. I have lots of stats, actually, by the way. I think Nigeria is about the top 20 most or bottom 20 of the worst air quality within the, I think, 200 nations or whatever that were ranked, right? And if you look at a place like Lagos and see how prevalent pollution is, I think Lagos is the biggest within Africa in terms of plastic pollution. You have landfills, you have waste that's just been dumped in the middle of the city and walk past by. We have generators everywhere. We have cars, we have really old cars that are not roadworthy. So climate change affects us in multiple ways without just the freak events that happen every now and again.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because sometimes we can feel that if we're not seeing the effects, that means it's not there, but it's there. As little as air pollution, like you spoke about, is something we interface with every day. And it's one of the reasons why life expectancy in this part of the world is really low. It's lower than other parts of the world, because our air quality is bad, and you breathe it in every minute of your life, every second of your life, literally.
Speaking of stats, air pollution causes 7 million deaths annually, and 500,000 of those are children.
Wow. Wow. So we see that it's not just about businesses. It affects our kids' life. It affects us personally. It's too important for us not to have conversations around it. Yes. But let's drive it down to businesses now. Why should a business owner care about climate change? What is in it for them?
Okay. Thank you. I've had that question from some of my clients, right? Because the data, the information about climate change is out there. Everyone can read it. Africa contributes just about 4% to global GHG emissions, the biggest contributors to climate change. Now, Africa also as a continent is the continent most at risk of climate disasters. Of the 7 most at-risk countries, I think 7 of them are African countries. Of the 10, sorry, the 10 most at-risk countries, 7 are African countries. And climate change has a lot of massive socioeconomic and macroeconomic impacts on businesses. For Africa, from an African perspective, you can see climate change as a dirty garment that really wasn't of our own making. We contribute 4%. If all businesses in Africa cut down their pollution, that would be 2%. There's still 98% to worry about, right? But then we're suffering the impact the most.
Yeah.
It has adverse effects on the economy, largely depending on the phase of the economy, the business and fiscal health of the economy. Now, most of the economies in Africa are underdeveloped or developing. So we don't even have the structure in place to cope, to be resilient to this impact of climate change. About 1,700 natural disasters have been reported in Africa between 1970 and 2019, leading to losses of 3.8 38.5 billion US dollars lost within Africa. Now the sectors of the industry most affected: agriculture, transport and tourism, construction and manufacturing, retail and banking. For agriculture, 95% of all the rain-fed agriculture globally activities within the world, 95% of it is in sub-Saharan Africa. So this is agriculture with the use of irrigation and whatnot. So when you have a drought, you can imagine the impact that will have on African agriculture. Supply chain constraints, roads become non-passable, bridges collapse, airports remain closed for a long time. Prices increase as well because for businesses, they really have to deal with all the supply chain issues, so they have to increase their prices. Customers move away when there's a flood, when the place is not livable anymore. It discourages investment. Now, foreign investors want to invest in a climate high risk area, right? Businesses have to borrow more from financial institutions. There's loss of infrastructure. In eastern Algeria, there was an earthquake that hit in 2020. About 122 houses were destroyed. 31 houses were partially destroyed. There's cracks in the roads, walls, streets, and what have you not. It has adverse effects on GDP, and people lose jobs. You could argue as well in terms of rebuilding and reconstruction, it creates jobs, but jobs also are lost, right? If I could bring this down to Nigeria, because I think most of us here are Nigerian, the economy last year lost $9.12 billion due to climate change impact. Our temperature, the national temperature in the country is expected to rise by 5.7% by the end of the century. 17% decrease in rice yields, so we're not going to have as much rice. Decrease in capacity of our hydropower plants. You're thinking of Kainji and whatnot. Decrease in water supply and inability to meet agricultural and industrial demands. Also, there's an increased heat-related deaths among the elderly. So these are all part of things that shape that narrative of the context of the African business, if I may. It's trying to be cautious of time as well. So.
Yeah, these numbers you're calling, they're not just numbers. They are real people being affected.
Yes.
Real businesses being affected. I think sometime last year Nigeria recorded one of the biggest and heaviest cases of flooding that destroyed a lot of homes, a lot of businesses, and it disrupted the GDP. And this is just a tip of the iceberg of what could happen. One of the things you said that was very profound is that Africa contributes only 4%, but then because of how climate changes, you don't need to contribute to suffer the consequences. So as much as other people are contributing, we're also suffering the consequences because it's just one planet. We may be in different parts of the planet, but it's still just one planet. So thank you for that, Ali. This is I really hope we can get your notes after this because those numbers you're calling, I really want to see them again.
Sure.
But how, because there are Nigerian business owners on this call who are also going to be listening to this later on, how do you think Nigerian businesses can build resilience? Because one of the things you mentioned is that as much as we're feeling the impact of this climate changes, we don't have the capacity to withstand a lot of this harmful effect. So how do you think Nigerian businesses can build resilience? Not just Nigerian, African businesses as well.
Okay. So before I answer that question, I should also add, because I don't want most of what I say to be negative and doom and gloom. So we're still in a state currently of mitigation and resilience, right? If there's a tipping point of where the effects of climate change become irreversible, we're yet to get there. Currently, I think the Earth is warming in about 1.2 degrees Celsius since the 19th century, and the 2015 climate Paris Accords that I mentioned were to have countries have their own nationally determined contributions to climate change to make sure that that heating is kept to at least less than 1.5%, and anything beyond the 2% would have catastrophic impacts. Even beyond 1.5% is going to be very bad for Africa and the three climate events that happen, the natural disasters anyways. Again, so back to your question about how we can build resilience. The thing to remember is that there are lots of guidelines and climate action and what have you not. So those are things companies can do to build resilience. But the main thing is that all these guidelines and all these standards should support the business's objective, not determine them. End of the day, a business is there to make money, right? But at the same time, you cannot operate as you used to due to the new reality. So I have about 4 things that I jotted down here that are for building resilience. And again, resilience in this sense is not what we would typically think of it as being rigid. Like an oak tree is resilient, it's rigid in the rain and whatnot. But resilience is more like the bamboo tree. You have to bend and fit the reality that you're faced with. So 4 things. The first is alignment of organizational purpose, strategy, and the business model, right? So we have the SDGs and we have this and that. And the SDGs, I think, for someone who has seen them, are very broad. You can find a way where what you do aligns to an SDG. It's not so difficult, really. But I think what companies can do is ask themselves 3 questions in this alignment. What do we do? What are we good at? What work needs doing with regards climate resilience? What needs to be done for us to survive, right? What needs to be done for us to contribute beyond just survival? Next is, and also most people choose awareness. So please think of what you can do beyond awareness. I think we're past the point of awareness, especially from companies. We need actual action. And also what aligns with my purpose as a business. So if you can have maybe 3, like a pie chart, you can see the intersection, and for the most part, your climate action will be there. You know what you're supposed to do. Next is the second is having a scientific and risk-based approach to climate change and climate risk. We have to measure our impact, our social and environmental impact. I have to be transparent about the reach and scope of what we can actually affect. Because when I say scope, is we have to think about our business in the entirety of its value chain, from your suppliers to the disposal or reuse of your product. You have to try to be accountable for the entire process and see what is you can do to what is you can do as your own climate action is. But it has to be scientific, right? It has to be a risk-based approach. I have to be accountable and also report on this because most of what I do is sustainability reporting. So the disclosures been out there are very, very helpful. It creates a lot of data for us to really see what is going on within industries, right? Next is embedding sustainability in practices and decisions. Your strategy, how you innovate, from the leadership down to your people and processes. Sustainability has to be a keyword across all the processes within a company. And lastly is engaging, collaborating, and advocating as well for climate action. You have to engage your external stakeholders, the community, even your investors. Nowadays, you see that investors are actually the ones engaging with companies, right? But also beyond that, the main thing is that every company has to do what they can in bits and pieces. There isn't a one size fits all approach. As a matter of fact, if you're trying to copy someone else's approach, it's an indicator that you're not doing the right thing you're supposed to do. Because if you look at a company or a person, if we're speaking to individuals, if you're a lawyer to contribute to climate action, you don't have to move into the ESG space. There's climate law. you can play in that space. So it's also a thing of how I say with the companies, even individuals can look at it from the action of what am I good at as a person, what needs doing, and where are my own passions, where do my passions lie. For construction, sustainable buildings, green buildings is a thing, it's out there. And so really you have to look at what makes business sense within your own context and try to then build that resilience. It's not without a little, without some, what's what I'm looking for here, without research, it's not as easy to just point to this is what you should be doing, this is what you should not be doing. You really have to take that scientific approach to it to see what your climate action is going to be.
I really like that because there's been a lot of emphasis recently on climate change and how businesses can take steps towards mitigation of the effect of climate change. And almost like the tendency is for you to run to the extreme and say, okay, let me build a whole business around ESG or climate change. But like what you said, what you can also do is adapt your businesses in a way that it contributes to the resilience, right? If I'm a lawyer, if I'm a bricklayer, I don't need to resign and go into ESG or climate action. What I can do is see how climate change fits into what I'm already doing and how I can use my businesses as well to build resilience. Thank you. I think that's very elaborate. Anyone that's going to be rewatching this is going to, I'm pretty sure people are taking notes as well. And then the video is also going to be available for rewatch in case you've missed anything. But I also want to highlight the fact that there's a lot of funding going on around climate change right now. A lot of funding. In fact, before international investors, even national investors right now would look at your business, it has to be tied somehow sort of to sustainability and climate action or climate change. Like you said, looking at your entire value chain and thinking of how your processes or your products can contribute to climate resilience, right? So how do you think businesses, local businesses now, can align to a lot of these fundings that are going on around the ecosystem? How can, for example, let's say I'm a lawyer, like you said, an example you gave, how can I align my law firm in a way that is fundable by these international investors, national investors as well? Of course, not everyone is going to get the money, right? Because there's only so much that can go around. But how can you position yourself in a way that you have an advantage?
Okay, so there are risks and opportunities with that. So good news and bad news. Which do you
Yeah,
prefer to start with?
both. Give us both. Hit
Okay,
us.
let me start with the risks. So
Okay.
before I think I answered this, just an addition to my last what I was saying the last question was that I should add that the a company that does good environmentally and socially and doesn't make profit, that's still not good, right? In the scope of ESG, profit is still important. Now, investors are interested in defending their interests. And investors are not trying to grow your business unless you're talking about angel investors. It's still about money, right? It's about financial materiality. What makes financial sense for them? Now, the potential risks related to climate and nature, regardless of whether your company creates them or not, as far as they're across your supply chain, could cause a financial risk to an investor, and that would count against you. Because let me see, what can I give an example? You have some part of your supply chain that is maybe in a region with conflict, or a region that has a lot of flooding, like we said earlier, and so now your supply chain is cut off because there's no bridge, or the roads are not passable, what have you not. So an investor will look at that and look at your business as a risk. You may still be making money, but that environmental or social risk is attached to your portfolio. Conversely, negative effects of climate change, negative effects that a company may by itself create on nature or on the society, anything within ESG that do not threaten the financial health of a company, we get a pass from an investor, right? So there is financing, but even that itself is somewhat political. The term, if for those who are interested, carbon footprint was actually coined and popularized by oil and gas companies to put the blame of global warming and climate change on us individuals. So now everyone is thinking, oh, what is my carbon footprint? Am I using too much plastic, this and that? But at the end of the day, industrial operations and the emissions by industrial action is far beyond what any of us can do. And when we try, and it's good for all of us to try to be more conscious of our footprint, but would make more progress, more of an impact if we do it within the business context, right? Again, to speak to some of the politics around this whole climate financing thing, and before I go to the opportunities, some of us may know Sustainalytics, which is the leading independent ESG and corporate governance research, evaluation, and rating firm. In 2022, yearly, they release their ratings for the most sustainable to the least sustainable companies. It's a ranking, I think, from 0 to 50. 0 to 10 is poor, 10 to 20, 30, 40, 50, what have you not. And within that ranking that came out in 2022, 2 oil and gas companies ranked higher than Tesla. Tesla is, as you know, EV company, electronic vehicle company. 2 oil and gas companies ranked higher than it. What are we talking about? How is that even possible, right? But when you look at the metrics they're using, they overweigh reduction of negative impact over the creation of positive output. So an oil and gas company already is producing so much. When they cut that by half, that's really good. A Tesla that may not be creating 10% of that pollution and is creating an alternative to gas vehicles is seen as not doing enough. They have to cut down. So, there's that. And also, if you look at that performance, I'm not saying Sustainalytics is what is only investors. They're not even investors really. But if you have that mindset from a European and you see how investors look at Africa would need about $3 trillion in investments to mitigate and adapt by 2030 to implement all the nationally determined contributions to climate change. So for us to be net neutral or net zero.
Did you say 3 billion or trillion?
Trillion, TRI.
Trillion. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
By 2030. Now, ESG scores are things that are influenced by opinions instead of just data. I said earlier, let's use the scientific database approach, but they're not using the scientific database approach to judge us, right? In fact, lawmakers in the EU currently, as early as 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, but it's within September, the later part of September, we're pushing back and working against ESG guidelines because it's not balanced. It doesn't make total sense. The comparison between industries is not equivocal, right? But I would leave that for maybe if you have an question. There's still more to unpack there. Let's talk about the opportunity. So, well, the opportunity is there for us in the climate financing and green bond space is that businesses and startups can access a pool now of investment and funding that was not available to them before now. What it takes is innovation and reporting. You'd be interested to know that even the biggest companies in Africa cannot access loans from this big, I won't call them companies now, institutions, which maybe the IFC or the World Bank. You need to show your carbon footprint. You need to have that. You've been successful, you have, you can say, profit for over a long period of time. But if you don't have your carbon footprint down, you don't have that data, you don't access it. So for companies that are new, companies that are smaller, it's much easier to put these things in place. You don't have rigid processes. You don't have, it's not going to be culture shock. You're just building your culture. So if you can integrate that as you're building your culture, as you become a more mature company, then you have access to cheaper financing. Really, you'll be seen as a lower regulatory risk company. Again, for people of my generation, and I think younger, you see a lot of interest in climate change. So it's a chance for companies to retain staff as well, increase revenue, and all these good stuff that come along with that.
Thank you so much, Ali. I like what you said about how for small businesses, what you can do right now is see how you can integrate climate consciousness as you are building your business, right? So it's not a, when I get big, I can now impute some of these ideas we're sharing, but as we're building, you can start making your business a climate resilient one, or one that helps towards the climate mitigation plans that Nigeria has. A good place will also be to read the news, see what's going on in the African space, especially around sustainability and climate change. If you're also a small business owner or you're trying to get into this space, you can read the news, see what's going on, see how you can align your business with what is being funded right now. A lot of research is necessary. Go online, see the kind of businesses that these international communities are funding, and see how you can align your business in that sense. Thank you so much, Ali. Thank you. Thank you. This is more than what I actually expected. All the facts you're bringing in. Someone's already raising their hand. Wait first. Wait first. Hold on. So I'm going to be asking a very personal question. Now, this one is not based on facts or anything. What's your opinion, your personal opinion about Africa and the climate change space? I have my opinion. If I share it here, now everywhere will scatter.
Let's hear it. Let's hear.
Oh,
Let's
no,
hear
no, no,
opinion.
no, 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 no. You are the guest. I have my opinion, but what do you think about Africa and the climate change space generally? What's that opinion you have about what's going on around the industry, around even how international bodies are influencing what we know as climate change right now?
I think quite simply we're dancing to a piper's tune. We're not taking action based on what is relevant and important to us. Now, it's all fun and good to talk about climate change and climate action, and I would use a line I got from one of my clients. They said, how does this impact the businesswoman in Ajagule? Right. So a lot of these disclosures speak to just cutting down carbon and this and that. But I made mention that earlier on, what affects us as individuals today may be air quality and even social issues. Really, if you look at just beyond climate, because I do ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance, social issues are the crux of a lot of our problems are around social issues. Environmental issues are also affecting us, but what we're doing now is literally trying to mitigate. We're not even, it's almost like past the point of let's try to, how is it even mitigation? I mean, we're adapting now. It's past mitigation. We're already been affected. So I see that we do have leadership in and around ESG and sustainability, African leadership. We have Dr. Inoli, I believe. If I got that name wrong, I'm going to be so mad at myself later on. But we have an African, a Nigerian, on the board of the ISSB. Yeah. So we have representation, but again, what disclosure standards are you seeing coming out from Africa? What leadership really, aside from maybe activists, there isn't much from a business perspective from African countries. You have the SSB again, like I mentioned, is out, it's still a work in progress. I'm not sure we have African businesses responding it, because it's open for response for companies to say this standard doesn't really speak to the realities of our business. So a lot of it is really looking at the realities of what the Europeans would want, or the North Americans would want. And these people have structures in place. Transportation is not an issue for them. Hunger, corruption, things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. Problems of, waking up 4 a.m. to come to your office for, it's not an issue. It's cheap. So there are a lot of things that we have to get right before we even tackle all of these things. And again, yes, as African businesses, because we've been affected, we have to put in place mitigation strategies. We have to cut down our emissions and what have you not. But in reality, because again, I speak to clients and they say, well, it's 4%. Really, what are we talking about here? Even if we cut down, what is it going to really do in the large scheme of things? So there is that pushback, and there's still, people are aware, but there isn't a full-on understanding of what it is really in a true sense. People see sustainability, climate action more like charity or something that is not a financial decision. It's not a business decision. It's let me do this by the side. But again, I say again that you can do well by doing good.
Yeah, I'm going to steal that slogan. You can do well by doing good.
It's not even mine.
Right. Well, personally, I think bordering on what you said earlier, I think we need to align what we define as climate change, sustainability, ESG, to the context of our realities as a developing country, as a developing continent, really. So the European man's problem really shouldn't be our problem if we're really looking at what affects us on a day-to-day basis. So I think we need to also go back and think about that. What is climate change really in the context of our own reality, and how can I align what I'm doing, what my business is doing, to our modern day problems as Nigerians. So thank you for that, Ali. I know there's much more you could share with us, but for want of time, I'm going to leave the floor open now to people who have questions. Let me see. I think I'm going
questions, please.
Let's see if we can take two questions. So Adamu Mohammed is asking, I've already raised his hand up, so let me give you the mic. Go ahead, Adamu.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yes, it's really a pleasure to be in this wonderful meeting because a lot have been said, and I can honestly say that I've learned a lot. But I just have a few questions for Mr. Ali. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I just have two questions, rather. The first one is, sir, I would like to seek your opinion on this particular issue. So, looking at the past negative effects of climate change in Africa, Nigeria precisely, especially the late 2022 and early 2023, that affected a lot of businesses and livelihood. Please, can you say the government are taking the right steps towards promoting sustainable climate change in Nigeria to aid businesses? That's the first one, please. I don't know if you understand, you get the question.
Yes, you can ask the second as well.
Okay. Now, the second one is also your own opinion. Would you agree, or do you agree or disagree that African is well informed about the effect of climate change? I just want to know, are we really informed about the effect of climate change in Africa, most especially Nigeria precisely? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Adamu.
Ali, so there are two more questions we're going to take. So let's answer as precisely as possible because we have like 15 more minutes on this.
So for the first question, like with a lot of things we're doing, or the government is doing something on paper. There's the Nigerian Climate Change Act of 2021. There's an energy transition plan to get Nigeria to be net zero by 2050 at the earliest, or 2060. Nigeria also is, I think, the first adapter or signatory to the ISSB IFRS S1, S2 disclosures at the COP27 last year, which will be in effect by 2024. So a lot of what we do, and also things around forestry, there's lots of acts, laws, guidelines in Nigeria from the government. But is there any enforcement? Is there any push? Is there any real incentive for companies to voluntarily abide, or from a regulatory standpoint, been pushed to do so? I don't think so. So I think on paper you can't fault them if you just look at it without really knowing the reality from the outside looking in. But I think if there is a push, you would know more than me that this has been pushed by the government. So it's still very, very lax. We have so much. We have even guidelines on noise pollution. Right? There's so much we have that isn't really isn't really in effect, unless there's a chance perhaps to now put a fine on you, then the government will show up to your step, I guess. And the second question, he said, do I think Africa or Africans are aware? Or he said that we are aware. And either ways, I would answer both. I think we're aware, like you made mention of, because we're seeing the reality. You cannot be aware of what is affecting you. We know how long Hamatan was. We know in our towns the last time there was a flood, and now when we're growing up, how many floods did you hear about? How many floods have you heard about today within the last 10 years, 5 years? So, but are we really are we aware? Is it just are we can hear, but are we listening? Are we comprehending that we need to stand up and act? That may be the question, and I'm not sure that we in a full sense, in reality, that we really are acting like we're aware of the dangers that face us.
Absolutely. I like how you have answered that. What we really aware. You can be hearing, but you're not listening, really. Because if you're actually aware, it will follow by action. And the fact that our actions are not aligning with this awareness means that we're not really aware, because we're not ready to make the move. Awe Moses, do you want to speak shortly? I see you've been raising your hand for a while. Are you still on the live?
Yes,
Okay.
good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Hello,
Good evening.
Moses.
Mr. Ali, thank you so much for this insight. My question is just one, and I want to ask, you've been mentioning some figures. How can we have access to all these database so that in our daily life we can be informed? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think that's a more easy one. So there's a lot of sites. I think some of the sites I called out were from Statista, I think even Analytics. I don't know if this will be on Agatha now. Is there a way if I share something with you, you can share with the participants, or how would that work?
Yeah, sure. We'll find a way to get to them.
Okay. So not everything. Not everything I've spoken to. Do I have the liberty to share? But for all I can, then I would. And also the sources really are there available, because some of the work was been done by the team, so I can't just put that out there. But a lot of the information is out there, and I just share links to some. There can be, I think, news agencies and also firms that just deal with this type of data. So it's not really a secret. It's out there, and yes, I can share with Agatha, and perhaps maybe on the emails or on LinkedIn. I don't know. We'll see if we can share with everyone.
Yeah, everyone that registered for the program will probably get a copy of whatever you're sharing with us. So I'll see how we can get to everyone. Someone asked the question, but he typed it. He said, does sustainability only speak to climate change? What about other areas like education?
No, no, no. Thank you very much. This is a very easy question for me. So I made mention that I do sustainability and ESG. ESG is environmental, social, and governance. And this speaks to environmental factors, social factors, governance factors affecting the business. Environmental factors, you can say climate change, you can mention air pollution, you can mention waste management, water management. For FMCG companies, companies that use water in their production, are you using water from water-stressed areas, or are you recycling your water? It speaks to deforestation, afforestation. Generally, speaks to the natural environment, right? So that's where the E part of it is. Then there's S, social. This speaks to all the stakeholders. This speaks to people, your employees, their welfare, health and safety, remuneration, payment, gender equality, gender balance, making spaces for PWDs in your workspace. This is employees. Communities, host communities. What are you doing for your host community? Are you, for example, if I can cite examples from 2010s, maybe 2000s, the Niger Delta, are you a oil and gas company that come and there's an oil spill and you guys just dip? You don't give back to that community. And as well, so within that community space, there is CSR, which is corporate social responsibility. So companies do, in effect, you can say, charitable actions around education, around healthcare, for example, around transportation. It can be anything really. It depends on what the needs of that community is and what the capability of that company is. And also governance speaks to the board structure, anti-corruption, whistleblowing, and what have you not. So sustainability really, for the most part, if you want to think of it broadly, speaks to almost every facet of a company that is not financial. Even though sometimes economic factors as well also are part of sustainability, because now you have more investors in sustainability. So pretty much everything sustainability is, I think, first I heard it is using the resources today for us to live, but then leaving some for the future generation. So basically, as a company, whatever is sustainable is what would meet the needs of today while still making sure that there's enough for tomorrow. So yes, companies doing initiatives around healthcare and what have you not is also
Yeah.
part of sustainability and ESG.
Yeah, sustainability is quite broad, so it covers every area of life, in fact. So just to close this conversation up, we've learned a lot. Ali, thank you so much. It's not just ending here. We're going to upload as well, so a lot of people are going to be watching this in the future. But on a lighter note, aside from climate change, sustainability, ESG, what else do you do for fun? And where can we find you? If we want to look for you, where else can we find you?
Yeah, thank you, Abdullah Anwar. I see you. I mean, you can't find me really unless you find me in person. I'm not on social media, but I do have LinkedIn, I believe, and I have a WordPress account where I write poems. So a bit of poetry is what I do in my free time. So I guess really those are the places where you can find me.
That's something that's very far-fetched from climate change.
Yes.
So when I'm sharing the link to the material you're sharing with us, I will also put a link to your LinkedIn account if that's something you're comfortable with, so that people that perhaps have other questions they can answer on this live for want of time, they can also shoot you an email on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Ali. We appreciate you taking the time out to do this for us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Everyone is saying thank you. Najib Usman says thank you. Thank you, Abla Anwar. I'm going to guess that's a family member because the
Yes.
surname is the same.
Yes.
So welcome, Abla. Thank you for joining us. We'll be having one of these again next month. So we really appreciate you taking the time to come on this. Thank you so much, Ali. I think that'll be all for today. Do you have any other thing you want to say to us as a bye-bye message? Anything you want to add?
I just want everyone to remember you can do well by doing good.
Oh my
So
God, I'm
I want it
stealing
to
that.
be, if you take nothing away, just take that, and also that within what you do, you can find your climate action. So
Mm,
what am I good at? What needs doing? And where do my passions lie? 3 circles. The middle, you find what you can do.
yeah, that's thank you so much. So I'm sure there are people that will come and disturb you on LinkedIn, so bear with us in the future while that happens. So thank you so much everyone for joining us today. We're going to be sending emails containing the link to this webinar and Ali's LinkedIn page. Peradventure you have other questions you'd like to have conversations with him. Yakubu, you've raised your hand, but we are fast. Time is fast spent, so you can ask Ali that question. I'm sure there's a way you can reach him somehow. So probably disturbing you, Ali. Sorry for that.
It's
Sorry
fine.
about that. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much. All right. Bye bye
Thank you,
now.
Anwar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ali. Have a good day.
Bye bye.
Bye. Yeah. Bye bye.